Hello, this is CCN News. Today we have some breaking news articles about the biases in hiring the mentally ill. In today's day and age, getting a job has become increasingly difficult with unemployment reaching its peak in recent years. Unfortunately, due to the demand for jobs and the difficulty of getting hired, there has been an uptick in discrimination in the workplace towards the mentally ill and those who have faced any criminal justice activities in their lives. Some words you should keep in mind throughout this segment are stigma, which refers to the negative label placed on an individual based on a particular quality; mental illness, which is a condition that alters a person's behavior and way of thinking that usually has a negative impact on their life; criminal justice involvement, which is defined as any interaction involving arrests, convictions, probation, and parole; and discrimination, which is an unfair or unequal treatment of people based on characteristics such as race, gender, age, religion, or disability. Today on CCN News, we will begin by discussing the article Bias Hiring Applicants with Mental Illness and Criminal Justice Involvement, written by the authors Ashley B. Battistini and Angelia D. Bolaños, Robert D. Morgan, and Sean M. Mitchell. An article released by researchers from Texas Tech University studies the effect of hiring applicants with mental illnesses and criminal justice involvement. The case study was conducted to further the findings from Ashley B. Battistini's study from 2014, Attitude Towards Hiring Applicant with Mental Illness and Criminal Justice Involvement, the Impact of Education and Experience. Existing research has shown that the stigma of hiring the mentally ill or individuals with previous criminal justice involvement can be minimized through education and personal contact. Due to employers believing in the pre-notions of the mentally ill, persons with mental illness experience higher rates of unemployment and lower salaries. About 36% of employees with mental illnesses report job discrimination, and about 60% of persons with previous criminal justice involvement are left unemployed in a year post-release. Employers have expressed apprehension in hiring said applicants due to the concern that these characteristics would hinder their performance. Researchers chose participants with experience hiring employees or seeking a job with responsibility. Those participants were then instructed to read one of four cases: a candidate with a mental illness, a candidate with criminal justice involvement, candidates with neither characteristics, and a candidate with both a mental illness and previous criminal justice involvement. It was shown that the participants were more likely to distance themselves from applicants with both mental illness and criminal justice involvement. They believed that criminal justice applicants were more responsible for their life situations and mental illness applicants were least responsible for theirs. Ultimately, the decision to hire depends on the perceptions of the employers. If employers had training in psychoeducation, providing individuals and their family with resources related to mental health conditions, it could increase the acceptability ratings. These results were consistent with Battistini's original findings. Although psychoeducation helped the disparity, the difference between people with mental illness and criminal justice involvement combined, and people with only criminal justice involvement, only applicants did not reach statistical significance. We will continue our discussion regarding the bias of hiring the mentally ill.
I'm Cameron Black, and I'm here with
Rachel.
Alright, so today I'm going to be asking you some questions about bias in hiring people with mental health struggles and criminal backgrounds.
Okay.
So if you had a company, would you hire a person who has a mental condition?
It would depend on the mental condition and also the type of company, but I wouldn't say it's an automatic no.
Okay, so it varies on.
Yeah, some people could be, have mild conditions. I mean, are we talking about schizophrenia? Are we talking about OCD? Sometimes mental health conditions vary, and also the industry.
Okay. Do you think people with mental illness struggle with employment?
Yes, probably.
And why is that?
Well, there's a lot of businesses and industries that might not be well suited for people with mental health issues. Um, if it's public facing and they have a severe anxiety disorder, that would be very difficult. And a lot of jobs are, so you would be, ruling out a lot of jobs for those people. I think, yeah, depending on what their issue is, it could be very difficult for them to find employment.
Okay. So let's say you were a boss. What concerns would you have with hiring someone who's mentally ill?
Again, depending on the condition, if it was something severe like schizophrenia, I'd be worried about their dependability, their ability to interact with clients or customers, even their coworkers. If it was something like anxiety, I'd have similar worries about interacting with people. Um, it would depend, but I think there'd be different things to worry about with each condition, and depending on the industry.
Okay. So do you think there should be more or less restrictions in place for hiring people who are mentally ill or may have a criminal background?
I'm not really aware of restrictions for hiring people who are mentally ill. I don't think that there necessarily needs to be more. I think it needs to be determined by the employer and whether or not the person's a good fit, just like you would for anyone else you were hiring. As far as criminal background, I think we need to be aware of people's criminal backgrounds. It's public information, and every employer has access to that if they do a background check, and that's good.
So you think it should be done on a case-by-case basis
To
suit the employer's needs?
Yeah, just like you would with anyone else, but I think employers have a lot of access to people's employment or criminal backgrounds as it is now. So I don't think that really needs to be strengthened or reduced.
Okay. So do you think employers should be trained on how to better manage people with mental illnesses?
Not specifically. I think as an employer, you need to treat everyone equally. If you want to take on the potential risk of hiring someone with mental illness, it would probably be to your benefit if you were trained on how to handle them. But um, you know, they may not need any different handling. But I think really everyone in the workplace needs to be treated the same. So either they're suited for the work and they can do it, therefore they're handled like everyone else, or they're not, and that's not the right place for them.
Okay. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all the questions I have for today.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
This next article, titled Impacts of Stigma and Discrimination in the Workplace on People Living with Psychosis. This study focuses on how employment can be beneficial to those with psychosis. However, stigma and discrimination appear to be a problem in the workplace for those living with mental health conditions. This article was presented by M.E. Hampson, B.D. Watt, and R.E. Hicks. Researchers conducted a research study that involved asking 137 participants two open-ended questions. Question 1 was, why do you think people with psychosis have lower employment rates? Question 2 was, what needs to change to improve their employment rate? These participants included a diverse group of people such as people with psychosis, caregivers, employers, health professionals, employment consultants, and community members. Many participants internalized negative stereotypes, leading to low self-confidence and fear of applying for jobs. Employers and coworkers were found to view workers with psychosis as dangerous, unreliable, and incapable. Participants reported being rejected after disclosing their diagnosis and being bullied, excluded, and denied promotions. Health professionals noted that people with psychosis often felt discouraged when pursuing work. Discrimination and stigma lie heavily in the workplace for those with mental health conditions. These views on people with psychosis are often taken out of context and are wrong and misleading. These misconceptions quickly spread throughout the employment market, creating a difficult barrier for those with mental illness.
I'm Cameron Black, and I'm here with
Brent.
All right. I'm going to be asking you some questions about bias in hiring people with mental illnesses and criminal backgrounds. So, first question is, if you had a company, would you hire a person who has a mental condition?
I think it depends on the circumstances.
Could you elaborate?
So I think there, you know, are some mental conditions that might conflict with the requirements of the job duties. Um, you know, to give a specific example, I don't really have one at the top of my mind, but you know, I can think there definitely are some situations where you could have a conflict.
Okay. Do you think people with mental illness struggle with employment?
Absolutely.
Why is that?
Well, I think there's a general bias towards people with mental illness, oftentimes unfounded, but you know, there's still a bias either way.
Do you think that same logic applies to people with criminal backgrounds?
I would say yes. You know, that's probably one of the primary reasons why, you know, you're always asked on every single, you know, job intake form, you know, do you have any felonies in your criminal history? You know, it's something that pretty much every employer wants to know right off the bat.
Okay. What concerns would you have with hiring someone who's mentally ill, personally?
I wouldn't have any general overall concerns right off the bat, but you know, it would be something that would be again, you know, related to job specific duties. If there was a conflict that would prevent them from being able to perform the job.
So case by case basis,
Yes.
depending on what it is and what they're supposed to be doing for that job.
Yes.
Do you think employers should be trained on how to better deal with employees who have mental illness?
Yeah, I think if you're in a manager position, or a position that you know you're going to interview and hire people, you should definitely understand the roles, responsibilities, not only of the position but also of the people you're interviewing. You should understand, you know, how their conditions might affect the job, the job outcomes, might even be beneficial towards the job. So you just have to weigh it case by case.
Okay. Do you think we should have more or less restrictions around hiring people with mental illnesses and criminal backgrounds?
I'm not sure that there needs to be a change in restrictions. You know, I'm really not well versed enough, you know, in the history of it to say one way or the other.
Do you think it's good where it's at right now?
Well, you know, I think with anything, there's always room for improvement. So, you know, again, it's something that should be looked at. Whether there's changes needed, I couldn't tell you.
Okay. Well, that's all the questions I have. Thank you
All right.
for your input.